The mark that a civilization has reached evolved civilization status that you can now interact with them. In my world, the mark is communication. The mark is when people start to realize that their planet already possesses an intergalactic communication system that communicates in real time. Everyone already has it. The mark is when you realize, find it, and figure out how to utilize it. I'll back up a little bit. One of the only things on our planet that can survive deep space and be unaffected by cosmic rays are mushroom spores. Also, they are small enough and light enough that if they catch in the right wind, they can actually escape the atmosphere without needing a drive. We find them in the very upper edges of our atmosphere, so they can actually escape the gravitational pull of the Earth and wander through space. One of the projects that this lost civilization did, and the reason mushrooms end up being present in millions of forms on nearly every planet with a sentient civilization, is because that was the way that they seeded planets with knowledge. They sent out billions of mushroom spores. They had huge planets that were just spore planets in grids, and they just sent it out and then seeded other planets. Psychedelic mushrooms on our planet, when people take them, they talk about experiencing other beings. They talk about how it feels like it changes their wavelength. So eating them, that yes, it gives an effect, but is the crude way. And many civilizations utilize them in many different ways. But the point is, the spores themselves, these original spore plants, they have small enough particles in them to be quantum entangled. So the mushrooms that grow on these planets millions of years later are also still entangled with the spores and the mushrooms on other planets. Two entangled particles, when you change the spin of one, the spin of the other changes instantaneously, even when they're light years apart. Doesn't matter how far apart they get, so that's faster than light communication because it communicates outside of space-time. All of the mushrooms in the cosmos are quantum entangled. So as these mushrooms grow, if you can figure out how to adapt your technology to them, they are just a giant antenna, and they become the communications network for all civilizations. So once you realize that it's actually making signals and other people are communicating, you can start to parse through them, billions of signals. Once you can figure out a way to organize them and listen to them, you realize that the whole universe is talking. Once you're able to communicate through that, all of a sudden, you're now a member of galactic civilization. That's how they get the plans to build gates. That's how they learn of the existence of life on other planets. Because traveling between them in any sort of conventional way, it's a long time. The practical way of doing it is gating. So that's how people gain knowledge about gating, but they have to make an agreement to get the technology. Then once they build it, the corporation comes through and now they need things in exchange for having given you the gate technology to build it. This is how the mushrooms figure in to the species that Victus is. Victus is a mycelia-based mushroom creature. I mean, he has mushroom features because he's a pivotal character, but because on their planet, rather than being a separate species that evolved and then figured out how to use the mushrooms, they had no competing life and eventually became the sentient mobile species. So they innately can tap in, and there's still non-sentient mushrooms that they use as communication devices. And whenever I say tap into it, it's not just learning how to communicate through the mushroom, you also have to change the mushroom to be better at it. So you have what end up looking like these big mushroom temples. Huge devices, so they can receive a larger bandwidth of signal. So as you get better at cultivating them, you get better at using them, integrating technology into them. Some planets, they look crystalline. Mushrooms come as a blank blueprint, and then they evolve into some form of mycelia neural network organism. Some look more like the mushrooms we think of, and then different planets adapt them in different ways to be better at receiving and sending signals. So on his planet, his race and other mushrooms, they are the dominant species. So that is why he is uniquely positioned to adapt one technology to another. They're always in contact with all of the cosmos, all the evolved species. Their way that they adapted the mushrooms was nothing. They can lean in and touch theirs and use it as a conduit. Whereas, say on my planet, there's a lot of tech involved. It looks more like a grown mycelia network that is then grown across to another biological network that adapts it over to circuitry network, photon-based networks. On his planet, it looks like a giant mushroom temple. And they just have alcoves where they just sit, and little bits of them, sort of grow in or plug in, and then they're connected. That's it. He's always been fascinated with other civilizations' technologies, so he's kind of an outlier. Just because they're good at it doesn't mean any of them normally do it. They just spend time communing with the mushroom. That's the basis of their economy, really, is information transfer. They often even serve as translators between one communication and another, translating this one communication into 400 languages or 400 ways of communicating. Whereas Victus spends his time analyzing and studying other people's tech. He is responsible for some of the planet's more advanced communication and adaptation to the mushrooms. And he's not supposed to do that because they're supposed to find out on their own. But he helps many of them figure out a way to adapt what they have as technology to the mushrooms. That's where he gets his translational knowledge about tech that he's not familiar with and adapting it to other things. So our drive is half derived from a computer system that he's come up with. It's really a mycelia neural network. That's how we do the processing for it. So on the planet that I am stranded on, you might think, well, since they were the originators of this communication technology, like, shouldn't there be a node somewhere to communicate? And the answer is, yeah, there definitely was, which functioned great until they folded themselves into a different dimension. So now think of it like, yes, these are all quantum connected in this quantum system of a single universe. That quantum connection, it's not connected to the now new quantum system of a pocket dimension is a separate universe. So even though all this stuff is there, there's no opening or doorway or communication hole that allows anything to go from one dimension to the other. So yeah, it's all there, but it doesn't communicate to anything anymore. That's why even the star maps and all of their charting is all old. It's never been updated since they moved their civilization into a pocket universe. There's a whole lot of things that are a problem because they disconnect, which they knew, but it was an either or sort of sacrifice. The reason for that is you can tell through the mycelia network where another planet is, because it's not just about communicating with them. You also need coordinates, because you build a gate, you have to know where to program one gate to go to another gate. Like, you have to know where it is positionally, because planets and universes and stars are always moving, planet around a star, star around a galaxy, galaxy around galactic clusters moving like a network throughout the galaxy, always drifting. So the position is always changing. So if you don't know where it is, you cannot keep the positional address always aligned. The other side of losing that connection also was supposed to protect them. It's why it's never been found. It's why there was no way to find it. Hence the question of, did I crash there because of the most astronomical odds possible and someone was eventually going to hit it? I think that's unlikely. So then the question is it Aeon's luck, or was it meant to happen? Was I supposed to be the one? And if I was supposed to be the one, did the last prince that was on that planet, did he know? Because he believed, but did he believe because he could see something in the pattern of the universe that in the future someone would come? And not just someone would come, but someone would come that could also be the answer. I don't know. He kind of talks in vague, mystical, zenned out blurbs in his diaries and his writings that I can read. The disconnection of the network is what kept them safe. Also, their mycelia network does not look like what we would think of as a mushrooms. Theirs is so far adapted along that it no longer looks like, oh, well, there's this place where you go to use the communications network. It's innately built in to everything they have. So to understand their technology better, if you imagine that you can program matter any way you want, you have a ship, and then here's the computer that controls it, and then here's the cooling system, and here's so on. It's part and parcel of the material of the ship itself. So if you think about quantum computing, it's about bits turning this way and that way, and you use each of those qubits. It's a single atom. Its spin determines, is it a 1, a 0, a 3, a 4? It's no longer binary. What if you could use the actual material the thing is made up of to be those bits of quantum computing? So right now, I think the limit on quantum computing is something like 36 qubits that they've actually successfully used. That's 36 atoms. Think of the quantum computing power if every atom in a ship were also the computer, if it were both. That is the level of their technology. Systems are no longer separate. Everything is integrated together. So also their mycelia network is part of any material that they make. What appears to be, or what acts like metal of the ship or of a device, is also the computing power, is also the communications power, is also its structure, is also its functional use. So everything is just a single thing. That's how far advanced their technology is. And that's why even if you find bits and pieces of their now inert technology on other planets, they keep looking for the control box or the plug-in. How does it make it do what it's due? And most of it's nearly indestructible, so it just seems like a hunk of metal that looks like it should do something, but it can't do anything. You can't pick it apart. But what people don't understand is even if you could cut it in half, what you would find is more of the same. Just the same material throughout, because it is, the individual atoms are the quantum computing power of it, are the circuitry of it, are the communications devices. Everything is in there in the atomic structure. It's how the thing was atomically arranged. Just looks like an interestingly shaped hunk of metal because it's not turned on, it's not powered. Once they disconnected and once they disappeared, it only comes alive when in the presence of someone that is part of that civilization. It's like a safeguard that they put in much too late. Is now true all over the galaxy, all over the cosmos where their stuff was left. When I say their technology appears as magic, it appears as magic. It is so far advanced, and then most of it is powered by a sun that is in a pocket dimension, then quantum tied to the energy being produced by that sun. So unless you're near it and you turn it on, it's not even accessing it. It's an unbelievable advancement and therefore completely inaccessible, because you'd have to comprehend the concept before you could even think, oh, that might be what they did. It's just inconceivable. In my world, I have kind of like a hot rod shop for spaceships, but I'm not building them from scratch. We're taking ships that still have a sealed hull and a functional systems, and we're adapting them because not everybody can just buy a spaceship. Most of them are controlled by large corporations. Kind of like when you buy a car outright versus lease it. When you lease a Tesla, if you don't pay for it, they repossess it by having it drive back. But instead you go and buy a Honda and you put a K24 motor in it and a turbo, and now you've got a hot rod that you paid like 10 grand for. That is the equivalent of what we're doing. We're using stuff that is outdated. We're adapting present technology to it so that people can move throughout the galaxy and not be tied to restrictions on travel, restrictions on access by these big corporations, because that's what I did as a profession. I snuck onto planets I wasn't supposed to be on, but you can't do that with a registered ship. You have to make it. So me and a buddy designed it, and most of the systems and programming and the network that controls a lot of the systems, because flying it analog style is a huge piloting job. So instead we make it more intuitive. All those systems are designed by Victus. He's a tech genius. He designs the systems. I am a builder and a maker, so I make the stuff. Then that's how it starts, is me making my own ship, and the expertise transfers over later whenever I get out from being imprisoned as a space pirate, essentially. I get out and I still have those skills, and so I start out by building my own stuff. Somebody else is like, oh, I have a problem with this, could you work this out? And it turns into the business, besides the space couriering. That's what supports the building of my own ships, is that I build them and I have a crew that works on them for other people. So I get out and I apply my skills that I had previously and I turn it into a business. Still, not a lot of money in it. Cost versus profit is still rough. Same with the couriering business. The corporate jump gates suck all the money and profit out of it. But the traveling is one of my favorite things about it, so I still do it. And I try to still make it a business, because what's cooler than traveling galaxy to galaxy and somebody paying for it? Because it's still, even in the future, while all the technology is fairly commonplace, the cost to do it is still prohibitive. So having somebody else pay for it means that I can, versus if you tried to fund it yourself just for the pleasure of it, that's a thing that's reserved for the 1%. So unless you have a reason, or you have a backer or something like that, or a business around it, the technology is there and it's ubiquitous. Most people don't get to, because the cost is prohibitive, which is what leads us to wanting to make this jump drive that's just innate on the ship, as opposed to having to use the rings, because we feel like we have the skill set. We don't believe it's impossible. We just believe it's not profitable, and that's why that no one makes them, because that would immediately put these massively expensive technological machines out of business, because people would bend over backwards to buy a drive that can go on their own ship. Groups of people who used to have their own ships would just band together and have one and a drive. And our idea is, once we design it and we make it, is we will just open source it. We don't plan to sell it. Now, just because we open source it doesn't mean everybody can build it. So people will still come to us to make it, but we already make ships. The drive, we want everybody to have it, because to describe how expensive to get one of these jump gates built near your planet, as opposed to in your solar system, but like built near your planet, Often these corporations indenture the whole planet. They have tariffs every year that are required to be paid for them to have free use of the gate. So it ends up, some planets turn into the entire planet as a monocrop for one thing that the corporation wants. It destroys entire ecosystem. Besides the prohibitive cost, it is also a form of economic slavery. So we are trying to upend that. That's why we try to make the drive in the first place. It's not because I thought I would need to use it to escape anything. We put it on my ship first because where else are we going to put it? Of course it's going to go on my ship. That's the evolution of why we come up with the drive. And we actually come up with the idea because we know that somebody must have been able to do that. Because we find the technology of the civilization I later get stranded on the planet, of their home planet. You can find their technology all over the place, but there's never any gates. There were no gates. There were no defunct gates anywhere that anyone's explored or anywhere near any of the planets where their old inert tech is found. So we know. Everybody else just says, well, something happened to the gates when whatever happened to the civilization. We don't believe that's true. We believe they had to have individual drives that could fold themselves. We know that it has to be possible. We know that their tech is everywhere. Everybody knows their tech is everywhere. You just can't use it. Victus has spent his life researching it because his whole niche is taking a technology of one civilization, making it communicate with that of another. Chemical-based technologies or neural-based technologies mating with mechanical-based technologies, electrical-based circuitry. That's his whole thing, is making one thing adapt to another, and so that it's not like you have to have stuff from your own planet, because there's so much travel and intermixing. He wants things to be modular. Our drive is derived from what he has been able to glean from inert objects that he has not managed to come back to life, but at least managed to be able to understand something of how it works. It firms up his belief that they had drives. They had to. The technology is so advanced, there's no way they didn't find a way. That belief, if there was, then we can find it too.